very much for coming along today to Striking Light Bulbs Awareness / Education event. I will be screening the film a little bit later to show you what ME is actually like. It was filmed in partnership with the Wellcome Trust and Cure ME in London. It's very informative, and it was screened at Stanford University last year. So who am I? I'm Sally Callow. I'm the Managing Director of Striking Light Bulbs CIC. I'm also an ME patient, and for the last 6 years I've been a global patient advocate where ME is concerned. So I am the founder of Striking Light Bulbs CIC, and Striking Light Bulb aims to bring about social change for ME C.F.S patients by educating the professionals that have a duty of care over them. We are the only company to offer accessible CPD training on ME C.F.S for healthcare, education and business professionals. There is no equivalent training worldwide. Striking Light Bulbs training is part of our social enterprise work. We work for the benefit of the ME C.F.S community. 50% of our surplus goes to ME research. Currently that's going to the Cure ME team in London. The aim of this session is to highlight the challenges faced by patients in education, healthcare and business environments. The objective of this session is for you to be able to identify the need for education about ME C.F.S. So what is ME C.F.S? Myalgic Encephalomyelitis. You have to kind of make your mouth go floppy to be able to say it. Considering most patients have slurred speech, it's a little bit unfortunate. ME is otherwise known as chronic fatigue syndrome. Myalgic encephalomyelitis is a chronic, fluctuating, complex neurological condition that affects most bodily systems, including the nervous and immune systems. 250,000 people have ME C.F.S in the UK, 17 to 30 million people have ME C.F.S worldwide. It's twice as common as MS in the UK, and yet we get a fraction of the government research funding. And in Portsmouth, there are at least 600 patients with ME C.F.S. It is a condition that employers, schools and healthcare workers in Portsmouth need to know about. Only 25% of all patients are able to work or study. To say otherwise is positive discrimination. Work is usually limited to part-time or flexible working hours due to our lack of energy and our naturally fluctuating severity that happens hourly, daily, weekly and monthly. 25% of patients is equal to 62,000 people in the UK that are currently being unsupported in schools, colleges and universities and in employment. 25% of the Portsmouth population of ME patients is 150 people. Those people need your support. So, when you break the word myalgic encephalomyelitis down, ME actually means brain and spinal cord inflammation with muscle pain. That inflammation causes up to 60 symptoms. Individual patients have a range of about 25 of those symptoms, which is why it's incredibly difficult to diagnose ME. Every patient is different. Additionally, ME C.F.S affected bodies don't create or use energy effectively in the same way as an ordinary healthy body does. We literally stop functioning when we run out of energy. A lot of people think that ME is just being tired. It's not, it's literally stopping functioning. I can't push through, and neither can any other patient when I run out of energy. I've got a very close working relationship with Cure ME in London, and Jack from Cure ME once said to me during a podcast that ME C.F.S patients aren't tired, their cells are tired. We're exhausted at a cellular level. Scientists have now found physical indicators of disease in ME C.F.S bodies. They found it in our blood, our brains and our gut. And yet psychologists say it is a psychological or psychosomatic condition. And the World Health Organization categorized it as neurological back in 1969. Okay, so the current situation is why Striking Light Bulb was set up in the first place. Patients with a mild severity have the potential to remain in work, but many are having to leave employment because there is a lack of suitable working practices. Myself personally, I requested part-time and flexible working hours from a disability-confident employer, and they refused because they didn't see ME as a disability. That is an issue ME is a disability, but many employers don't realise that. Mild patients are struggling to prove eligibility for any kind of disability allowance and are finding themselves in dire financial situations. It's incredibly difficult to get benefits anyway if you're disabled. If you have an invisible fluctuating condition like ME patients have, it's virtually impossible, extremely difficult. There's also a substantial level of stigma and disbelief surrounding the condition, because I look absolutely fine, but I know in 2 hours' time I'm going to be not functioning on my bed, unable to speak properly, or I won't be able to watch TV and have to have the curtains drawn. You only see patients when they are well enough to be seen. Students are dropping out of school, college or university because education professionals simply do not know how to support patients within existing disability frameworks. 25,000 children and young adults have C.F.S in the UK. It's not surprising that teachers don't understand what ME is. There was a research conference yesterday, and GPs think that, only 11% of GPs in the UK believe ME affects children. So 90% don't believe that children get ME, but 25,000 children and young adults have it. So education is needed. Educating professionals will help the ME/CFS community to reduce its economic burden in the UK. In 2015, our economic burden was £3.3 billion in the UK alone. It will have increased since then because we naturally get about an extra 9,000 patients every year. So that amount of money will have gone up, but there's currently no up-to-date research on that figure. But I want to know, what does my audience think is included in our economic burden? What kind of costs?
Not being able to work.
Yep, not being able to work.
Claiming benefits.
Claiming benefits.
Like medical appointments.
Yep.
Appointments.
Yeah, lots and lots of medical appointments. Okay, so what I've come up with is recruitment costs for replacement staff, because if a business lets an employee go, they have to recruit a replacement. Training for that replacement member of staff. Presenteeism is huge. So someone turns up for work just to show that they're willing to work, but they may well be sat there in front of a laptop or a computer, unable to function enough to work. So presenteeism is an issue for the ME/CFS community. Attrition rates, dropping out of school or university, disability benefits, carer costs. People with mild ME won't necessarily need carers, but moderate and severe patients will. And you mentioned medical appointments. Patients can't control their fluctuations, so they may well end up having to miss appointments regularly, and a lot of people are being dropped off of GP books because they're missing too many appointments. If GPs understood fluctuations, that wouldn't necessarily happen. And businesses are also having to deal with complaints and give out compensation because they don't understand what they're dealing with. You can help us to reduce our economic burden by keeping those who are able to in work or education. ME is a spectrum illness. It goes from mild at one end, that's what I've got, moderate, severe and very severe. You can help to limit the possibility of someone with mild ME going on to get worse. Someone like me who's able to function, work about 20 hours a week, if I overexert far too much, I could well end up being bedbound or unable to leave my home more than maybe 3 times a week. I don't want that to happen, so I make sure I manage my health as much as I can. By doing our courses, you'll be able to make informed decisions about care plans, extenuating circumstances and return to work plans, all of which will be able to help the patient manage their health and their energy effectively. And unfortunately, it will also help you to identify when no amount of reasonable adjustment will be able to keep that person in work or in education. Nobody wants to have to leave employment, but if your body won't allow it, the sooner you realise that, the better, instead of trying to push through. So I personally have mild ME/CFS and can work about 20 hours a week from home. I can set my own hours. I literally work in small chunks, so 1 hour here, 2 hours there, over the space of the week. I look fine now, but delivering this event will cause a significant crash. I know that my ME/CFS will be flared in 2 days' time. post-exertion malaise is the key defining characteristic of ME/C.F.S. And I know we sound like hypochondriacs when we say, I'm sorry, I did something yesterday, I can't meet you for coffee tomorrow because I know I'm going to be unwell. That's how ME works. Post-exertion malaise means that your symptoms will severely worsen 24 to 72 hours later. If nothing else, people need to understand that, because that's part of the reason why we're so badly understood. So exercise or excessive activity can cause severity to worsen or deteriorate. The sooner a patient takes their foot off the pedal and reduces activity, the less likelihood they are to go on to develop more severe ME. Part of our course addresses how long it takes to get a diagnosis. We're not asking employers or teachers to diagnose ME/C.F.S, but if they're aware that that is what could be happening, the sooner you allow that person to take their foot off the pedal and implement reasonable adjustments, the less likelihood they're going to have to drop out in the longer term. The PACE trial is covered in our courses. I'm not going to go into detail here because it's very complex, but it's basically a research study that said ME patients simply need to exercise to get better. That's been adopted by NICE guidelines. The NHS follow NICE guidelines, and scientists from around the world have said that it is flawed research. However, it's not been dropped by NICE guidelines yet. But I want everyone watching this video to know that exercise does not help ME patients. It's like giving sugar to a diabetic. It's the one thing that triggers our symptoms to worsen. So like I said, that's included in our training. That's a big topic for people to know about. Okay, so the film. The film I'm showing today is Voices from the Shadows. It's about severe or very severe ME/C.F.S patients. It was filmed in the UK, so this is relevant to how ME is treated in the UK. This shows the worst type of ME that you can have. These patients can be bedbound for years, if not decades. And I think one thing that everybody needs to understand is that ME can kill. People don't take it seriously, but it has now been put on people's death certificates. And that's why education is vital. If you can help to prevent that patient from worsening, then that's the end goal, really. And if your business can save money, if your school can keep kids in school, then you're benefiting as well as the patient community. Thank you very much for coming today, and I hope you enjoy the film.